you work with a lot of people who've gone through forced change, and a lot of people want to move into entrepreneurship afterwards, but they feel quite frightened by it.
That is their self-identity. If they identify with who they are and think, well, I want to become that, there's a gap, and that gap's the difficulty. But when you just look at the outcome, I'm going to be that, suddenly your subconscious mind looks for a pattern, it can't find it, boom, the whole nervous system kicks off, and the prediction is failure. The prediction is people might laugh at me. The prediction is I might look an idiot. The prediction is not good. But if you are focused on the next step, the prediction is, oh, I can do that, or I can do that, or I can do that.
Welcome to Reinvention by Design, the podcast for corporate leaders and high performers who know the world of work is changing and are rethinking how to future-proof their careers, income, and identity. I'm Karen Holland, a former global technology executive, and each week I'll take you behind the scenes of reinvention, the real stories behind it, the decisions that changed everything, the practical steps to build new paths, and the mental barriers that hold even the most successful people back. Our guest today is a man who has mastered the art of the high-stakes transition. With a career spanning 4 decades, he has evolved from being the youngest cruise director at age 22, commanding entertainment on legendary ships like the QE2 and the QM2, which actually was the largest cruise ship in the world in 2003, to become a powerhouse in UK television with over 15,000 hours of live broadcasts and rising to head of channel for BID TV. Today, Paul is a multi-hyphenate entrepreneur, a neurochange master practitioner, success coach, mindset trainer, author, and property investor. As a founder of Engage with Success, he doesn't just teach the mindset of freedom, he builds the practical foundations for it. Please welcome the media maven turned transformational coach, serial entrepreneur, and investor, Paul Becque. Thanks for joining, Paul.
You're welcome, Karen. Great to be here.
Awesome. So, Paul, I'm going to ask you questions around 3 different areas. The first is around the many reinventions that you've had in your career and kind of dig down a little bit in terms of the why and the learnings. Second areas will cover some of the importance of preparation before the reinvention and how you have surrounded yourself with the right mentors. And finally, we're going to cover some of the mindset challenges that people typically face when they're going through major transitions or reinventions. So first, let's take a look at some of the major reinventions in your life. So early on, after you had been a cruise director for a few years, you actually took a 4-year sabbatical in LA, where you went back to studying. You started to study acting, but also worked as a production manager at Universal Studios, and you volunteered for the LA Sheriff's Department. So I'm curious, after being in such a high-profile role, what did that period of really kind of starting more from zero teach you about ego and the ability to reinvent yourself in a completely foreign environment?
If I go back a little bit further, put this into context before I share. Ultimately, as a youngster, I didn't have the greatest start in life. Dad's ex-military, been to jail for GBH and all sorts of things, but basically he used to beat me and tell me I'd been nothing. So that I had 2 choices, right? I could either believe him and go downward, or I could prove he was wrong. And fortunately for me, I don't know why at the time, I can't tell you, but I decided to prove him wrong. So that was a big driving force through my early years, which is what led me to eventually run away, leave the UK, end up in the Caribbean, get on cruise ships, and then become very driven. I'm just a working class kid that had a very strong drive. And I think you hear that story in a lot of people that are far more successful than I am. They had a drive inside them, and we can all nurture that. So that's really, really important. But as a kid, I think trying to hide or find a different way of dealing with all the difficulties that I was struggling with in life, I came across acting quite by accident, and I enjoyed it and did some school plays, and it was fun. It gave me a chance to put on a mask and be somebody else. And then that in turn put me into entertainment, and I ended up going on the cruise ships, got into entertainment, became the head of entertainment, and made a shed load of money. But only because of the mindset books that I'd been reading, because it made me look at life from a very different perspective. I hadn't been taught by anyone. I just embraced these books and thought this is a way forward. So to go back to where you've got us in the story, after 6 years on the ships and having a great time making lots and lots of money, I decided to go back to my acting. And I thought, if you're going to go acting, the thing you're going to do is be a movie star, right? And where do you go to be a movie star? Let's go to Hollywood. So that's really what happened. I was in Seattle, Washington, actually, visiting my sister, who'd also run away. And while I was there, I saw an advert in a paper for the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. And I thought, that's it. That's perfect. That's what I'll do. So I flew down to LA. I auditioned, and fortunately, I was accepted. And originally, it was just for summer school. And I thought, I'll give it a go. That would be fun. And I got in and I did the summer sequence. It was all brilliant. And then they invited me to come back for full-time education. And I was thinking, I don't know if I want to do this. And so I got very anxious, very nervous, and thought, well, I've got this life on the ships. I'm making all this money. And so I decided to go back to that. And I got the school to give me a year. They agreed that I could have a 1 year that it would be an open invitation. And as long as I came back within the year, I could still go. So I went back to the ships. And over that year, I decided, yeah, I do want to do this. So I gave up the ship. And then that's when I went to LA for the 4 years. When I got to LA, I thought I was a movie star. If you're in LA, you're a movie star. Oh, bear in mind, I'm a working class kid that made a load of money, but didn't really know how or why, and didn't have a system at the time, and certainly hadn't been educated to how to invest, how to buy property, or any of those things. So I promise you, within a very short amount of time, I was dating Miss Ohio and was renting limos, flying helicopters, going out to Catalina Island. I was having a blast. But of course, probably about a year later, I'd spent everything. It was crazy. But anyway, I enjoyed the training. The American Academy of Dramatic Arts was absolutely brilliant.
You had a blast, and you prepared for it, right? You prepared. You had that 1 year where you could decide. You'd had money in the bank.
At that point, I wasn't really, to be very honest with you, I wasn't really into preparation in those days, because it was a little bit like everything was just pushing through like a bull in a china shop in those days. It's very different now. Let me give you a little more context so you can understand how this journey began. So I've told you about my childhood, decided that wasn't for me. I had to find a better way, prove myself in the world. So ended up going out to the cruise ships. And when I joined the cruise ships, it was all kind of like everything just fell into place. The DJ wasn't doing a great job and the bar wasn't making a great deal of money. And the cruise director wanted to improve things. And so he was looking for anyone that was willing to work hard. I went on as actually like a mime artist doing the Marcel Marceau type stuff, which was good for Costa Cruises because they have many different nationalities on board. So that's how I got on. And then when I saw the opportunity that I could start DJing too, and I've been DJing in the UK, nothing fancy, not like DJs we see these days. I didn't know how to mix the records or anything, but it was an opportunity just to play the music on a cruise ship and get an atmosphere going. So I did that, and of course, earned more money. Then I started generating money in the bars, and I realized that the more money you made for the cruise line, the more money you would make. That was a big learning point for me. And the cruise director was a brilliant guide. He already had a plan in place. I didn't know this at the time, but he figured if I can work hard for 2 years, I can retire. And he was only about 35 years old. So he taught me everything he knew. And there was a plan in place then for him to be able to get off, and I could replace him, which was pretty epic.
Well, great succession plan for you, right? Awesome.
Yeah. But in those, so I joined the ships at 20. And in a very short time, I realized I wanted to be like Steve, the cruise director. And I was 20, and everyone's telling me you've got to be 25, 26 to be an assistant cruise director, probably about 30 to become a cruise director. Well, I wasn't going to listen to that. And here's where things got magical for me. A guy called Fernando, singer on board, gave me a book called The Power of Positive Thinking. And that was interesting. And it set a few things going off in my mind. And then the second book that I got was The Power of the Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. And then that really did light my world on fire, because I realized there's all these invisible forces that we don't know about. But if we can master them instead of them mastering us, we can take control of our life. So that is a huge piece. So positive thinking, now learning how to control my life and deal with the subconscious mind and not just follow patterns I'd been taught, but create my own patterns, things started changing. And then the third book, and I always look back and think it was like the universe just feeding me all the stuff I needed, because this succession of books seems to be perfect. And this one deals with self-identity. And that was the Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. all three books worth getting hold of, but bear in mind they're from the 60s and 70s, so kind of old English, old hat these days, because we didn't really know about neuroscience and all the stuff we know today. So it's gone a long way, personal development, from those early days. But those three books in succession dealt with my thinking, then dealt with my subconscious mind, and then dealt with my self-identity. Boom, what an explosive combination of books. And so basically I got the idea in my head that I could be the cruise director, and I didn't care that I needed to wait till I was 25 to be an assistant, and that I needed to wait till I was 30 to become a cruise director. That's very powerful. This is all part of everything that I learned. So that change of self-identity was an incredible step. And so within just a few months, opportunity came up. I could have gone to my sister's wedding, or the cruise line said, no, don't leave. If you stay, we'll make you assistant cruise director. So I was assistant cruise director by like the age of 21. And that was pretty impressive right away. And now I'm really thinking I can beat all these boundaries. Yeah, these just hurdles, I can do it. And then a year later, the cruise director followed through with everything he said. He said he was going to be ill. So he went ill. The cruise line's like, what do we do now? And he says, it's a cruise director in charge. That's what he's for. And they're like, he's a kid. And they're like, he's be fine. But the guy just went off. Steve went off for just a couple of weeks, pretending he was ill. And I took over. And the meter, the way to measure my success was the fact that they may still do it these days, but clients filled out, the passengers filled out comment forms. And so at the end of those comment forms, the results were phenomenal. And so the cruise line went, boom, this guy can be a cruise director. So I'd already become a cruise director at 22. And then they sent me off to work with a guy from Scotland, another cruise director. And they basically said I was a diamond in the rough. So I worked with him for a few months. They polished me off. And then I became a permanent cruise director. And I did that for about 6 more years, made a shed load of money. And so now that you understand all of that, I clearly got in my head, well, if I can do that and make all this money, I can go to LA and make LA my new cruise director.
You had the confidence, you knew that you had the mindset and the preparation.
Yeah. And there was some preparation because, you got to get visas. And even in those days, US, the US has always had things in place for you to go into the USA and do it legally, and had a great time. But really, I just thought I went and played, and I did audition for lots of things. And probably I was one of the most proactive kids in the fact that I was doing the training with the school. I got myself an agent. He started sending me out for work. So I started doing extra work. So I think I'm on fire. I'm going to make this. It's going to be great. But I guess I didn't have the confidence and the courage. I've never really analyzed any of this, but I would look back now and say that I probably didn't have strong enough self-identity to actually make it. And so
But perhaps all that experience led you to what you did later, right? When you transitioned then into the world of TV, maybe that experience that you had in the US was quite foundational.
learning curve, because that basically at the end of all of that time, I lost everything. I had no money. I was loving LA, and then I was allowed to work. So I started working for Universal Studios. I think it was foundational because I'd lost everything. I thought I got to smart up. So my visa ran out. Universal said, we can't keep you because you can't do something that an American can't do. And so I decided to leave. I had the choice. I'd stay illegally or not. And I didn't want to never be able to go back to the Americas. Then I ended up going back to the cruise ships, making money again to get back on my feet. And then I fall in love with a dancer, and we wanted to get married. And I thought I'd seen other people on the cruise ships get married, but they weren't having really a successful marriage.
It's hard to have a relationship on the seas, right? And that's when your next transition kind of came, I guess, because you decided to return to dry land. At that point, you transitioned more into the world of television, where you became, quite a staple of UK live TV, and 15,000 hours of live broadcast. You climbed up the ranks. That's a massive, massive reinvention, actually. So, I mean, you've touched on potentially the why behind that transition because you met a special lady in your life. But what did you learn about yourself during that transition?
I wanted to be on land and have a family, and what I didn't want to do is be like my dad, basically. So it was a very big drive once again because of those experiences. I knew that I wanted to be a good dad and a good husband. And so all of that was going on in the background. So Helen and I decided we give land 1 year, give it a year. And if we couldn't make it work, then we wouldn't get married. So we both came on land and we started to work on it. And I thought, I've been in entertainment for the last 18 years. So the best thing I can do is get into entertainment. And what's the best way to do that? And I looked around a few ideas. It wasn't making enough money. Video wasn't really interesting for me. And so I thought, I'll be a TV presenter. And so again, a bit naive, to be honest with you. But the planning was I'll give it a year and I'll work on it. So I started going out and auditioning. I got an agent. And so kind of repeating what I did in LA at this point. And started auditioning. And I got a few little breaks, did an advert, brought some money in. I became an expert for cruises on a travel channel. So that was bringing money in. So working my way in gently. But then I heard a few times that my experience was very different to the people I was up against. They had 18 years in telly. I had 18 years traveling the world. So my experience didn't measure to the people I was up against. So I thought, right, I've got to go back to basics. So I was like, what's the worst TV I can find? And I worked my way up through the channels and I came across shopping TV and I watched several channels. And I thought, I'm really a fun guy. I like fun. I said, I love adventure. I want to take life by the horns. And I found this channel called Bid TV, and it was basically an auction channel. And the people on there looked like they were just having fun. They were jokers, and I didn't see anyone famous. So I'm like, well, I can compete with these people. So I practiced. This is where now planning did come into place. And I did overcome the challenges that I'd had in LA. So I practiced in my bedroom for 3 months. And I literally flog in Egyptian cotton towels to a camera and pans with copper bottoms. And I learned everything I could about them. And so I literally became an expert on Egyptian cotton. I became an expert on these copper bottom. And I did a recording, sent it into the TV studios, and they called me up and said, great, come on in. Went and auditioned, and I thought, I smashed it. So then I started, and in that channel, if you were new, you started in the mornings because that's when they made the least money. If you got good, you worked your way up to the afternoons, they made more money. And if you got really good, you'd be on at night where the seasoned presenters were, and they were making all the money. So clearly my goal now, got to become those guys in the evening. And it wasn't a matter of weeks, but it was certainly months. And in a few months I was in the afternoons, and then within a few months I was on in the evenings. So I started making the good money. And from there, I got the idea that actually somebody else suggested to me, why don't you run the channel? So I'm like, okay, that's an idea. And that was probably 2 years later, but then the opportunity came up and I took it and I became head of channel. So then another opportunity came up and I became freelance rather than being working for a permanent channel. I became a freelancer. And that was the smartest move I ever made.
I'm curious about that transition as well, because that's actually another point of reinvention, because you'd reached pretty high level, right? Head of channel. And then you decided to move more into, I mean, what other people could maybe think is more uncertainty as an entrepreneur working for yourself. So why was that kind of like security of being that head of channel no longer enough for you? What else were you looking for? And, what was the uncomfortable truth you had to be honest about regarding that corporate experience for you?
I think at that time, really, it was an addiction to success, an addiction to more. And even today, I wouldn't say I'm addicted these days because it's very different mentality, but I'm still very driven by being the very best version of myself. And I think that's really all the way through all of this. If you were to try and join the dots, that's what it's been. I can be the best version of me, the best version of me, the best version of me. All these books behind me, they're all about becoming the best version of me. How can I be more productive? How can I be smarter? And so a little part that we've dropped here is while I was on TV, I started doing stocks and shares and investing money. And I did that very badly. And I lost my pants in one particular case. A lot of money just disappeared overnight, gone. I know a lot of people tell you, no, you got a strategy, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, because of all of that, I decided that I wanted to start investing and get smarter about creating security for my family. It wasn't for me. I was still quite happy to be the adventurer and go for it. But now, because the kids started coming along, I already had 2, and now I've got 4. And I wanted to have stability for them, stability for my wife. And so you might say, well, being an entrepreneur is not stable, but it gave me the opportunity to do much more. So now I could do television, and that I could reduce that to 2-3 days a week. And now I could train other people to go on television. I could now start training people in mindset, and the whole mindset idea. The reason that I do this today, and that's really all I do today, is because I wanted to share with my kids how they could change their lives very, very quickly just by changing their thinking and their feeling. And so I started creating a program for them. It wouldn't sell. It wasn't in my mind that I'm going to make a program and make money from it. But I thought I'd do it for the kids, so they haven't got to read all these books, and it can shortcut it for them. So if they have an understanding of how the brain works, what the subconscious is, how we operate as human beings, and how we can now make that work for us, then that's going to be really good for my kids. That's a legacy for the kids.
No,
So while I was
absolutely.
building that, my friends started saying to me, maybe round for dinner or out for dinner, and I'd start telling them what I was doing, and they're like, that's amazing, dude. You got to share that with us. So that was really the light bulb moment. Share it with us. I could share it with more people. And so that was a big, big light bulb moment. So then I dived into learning to become a coach that I could really help people, because I thought if I just share content, that's training people, and training is good, but it's just information. And really what I wanted to help people with was transformation. And so at the time I thought coaching was the right way to go. And I've got, even above all these books, folder after folder after folder of all the coaching I did 4 years nonstop deep dive, completely committed to it. And then I created the program, and I started picking up clients and building my practice, and things were going well. And then I realized I'm never going to make money doing this that I'm accustomed to making. So if I want to live the lifestyle that not only have I had in the past, but dream of having, I got to be able to leverage my time and money. And so that's when I decided from one to one to one to many. And by that time, I'd probably been coaching about 5 years. So I was ready for it, because I had a lot of content. I had my system built. I had a good idea what I would do. And so then I just learned to go one to many, and just leveraged and leveraged and leveraged. And it went from one to half day, well, not even half day workshops. Let's call it quarter day workshops, 2.5-hour workshops, to 4-hour workshops, to 8-hour workshops. Then 2019, I went to retreats for 3 days, just grown and grown and grown and grown. And so that really is my passion.
Even from an early age, right? Reading all of those books at the age of 20, on mindset.
Was to prove myself to my dad. And then once I did that in my head, and by the time I was 26, I'd already made $1 million. So that was a huge step for me. And that's what money behind me made me go, I don't need to prove myself anymore. And that's probably why I decided to go to LA, because I could risk it all, and then pissed it all away. And then I rebuilt myself again. And so really, I would say, to answer all of your questions, because I know you're about reinvention, the key word here is self-identity. And if you can identify with who you're going to become, not who you are, but who you're going to become, and you can embrace that and become relentless at becoming that, then you're in the right place.
And what I love also is the fact you've got that very clear vision of who you want to be, but you've always planned for it very carefully with foresight, or at least it seems from the outside. So, for example, when you were still at the TV, you were simultaneously building up your coaching skills and founding your coaching company while you were still in that role.
It's interesting the way you're saying that, because you're seeing that as planning, and I don't really. In fact, I teach my clients, I'll share this with you, it's really, really important, and it's to do with everything we're sharing. So I teach my clients engage, and the first E is for evolve. You've got to evolve your mindset. And I guess that going from being this kid that went on the cruise ships, I evolved into a cruise director. I don't really see that I planned it. I just kept taking the next step, the next step, the next step, and it evolved. And when I went to LA, same things, next step, next step, next step. I had no idea I'd work at Universal. I had no idea I'd do the things that I did do, and I did some movies. I had no idea that it was going to lead to what it did. I had no idea that I'd go back to ships, no idea that I was going to go into television, no idea that I'd be head of channel. So it's all kind of an evolution. And even when you just said then about I worked 4 years in coaching, I didn't see it as next step, next step, next step. it was evolution. I did see it as step by step by step, but I didn't see it as planning or planned. So it's probably only a different use of language, and I just kept easing into it, easing into it, easing into it. Whereas you're seeing it as planned, and I tell you, but I didn't sit down and plan. Funnily enough, now though, now that I teach my clients, I've currently got 120 clients, and planning is a big part of that. So when we get to action, which is the A of in engage, I am a big fan. You've got to take action. I'm never use the word manifestation. It's about taking action. So the first part is two parts. Three, I'll let you in secrets. Three parts. First one is action planning, and I have a whole system that I share with them to create. And this is really important. The system that I've created is specifically designed to help them get around the four things that are going to stop them from achieving their goals. And I can share those with you in a moment if you would like. But we've all got these same four things, this protection protocol, I like to call it, that holds us back. And everyone comes up against them. And so the planning helps overcome all of that. And then it's action steps, and it is little micro steps, tiny little steps in the right direction, which is really helping them to evolve and move towards their goals. And then the final part of action is satisfaction, because if you're not happy, if you're not satisfied, if you're not enjoying what you're doing, you're just going to go into procrastination or overwhelm and just quit. So satisfaction is a key part of this. So I guess if you're moving towards something you love and you're excited by and you're passionate about, you'll have the grit to do that. And if you don't really love it, if you're just doing it for the money or because someone else wants you to do it, you're not going to get there.
Yeah, and look, I think that's that's a great perspective, and I know you work with a lot of people who've gone through, maybe like a forced change that's happened in their life.
Yeah.
And a lot of people tend to want to move into perhaps entrepreneurship afterwards, but they feel quite frightened by it, the fear of failure, so it can be quite blocked. So yeah, I think some of the things that you've shared are potentially things that can help people then move through those feelings. Yeah.
It is their self-identity. If they identify with who they are and think, well, I want to become that, there's a gap, and that gap's the difficulty. And then the brain actually works against us in many, many ways. So the brain's really good at doing four things. First one is prediction. And so it's going to start using the subconscious mind to look through patterns it recognizes. It's looking for familiarity. And so if you evolve little by little by little by little, there's a good chance that you won't have so much fear. But when you just look at the outcome, I'm going to be that, suddenly your subconscious mind looks for a pattern, it can't find it. Boom, the whole nervous system kicks off, and the prediction is failure. The prediction is people might laugh at me. The prediction is I might look an idiot. The prediction is not good. But if you are focused on the next step, the next step, the next step, the prediction is, oh, I can do that. Oh, I can do that. Oh, I can do that. And so they're much more likely to get their way through. So the second thing that happens in the brain is protection. I call it the 4 Ps. The second one is protection. And that's ultimately, if it can't see a pattern, if it can't see a way forward, if it can't join those dots easily and effortlessly, it's going to set off the fear, the doubt. And I would say that fear and doubt.
Yeah, it's trying to keep you safe.
Yeah, it's trying to keep you safe. Exactly. All of this is protection. It's all protecting you. But ultimately, that keeping you safe is what people experience fear and doubt. And that stops them from having the courage to move forward and achieve the goals that they want. And then the third P is production. This really interesting one. And I encourage your viewers to Google this if they don't believe it or never heard it before. But it's factual. It's neuroscience. The third P is production, and that's your brain will produce the chemicals to suit your thinking. And so ultimately, if you're thinking I can do this and you're in a good place and you're excited by it, then you're going to be knocking out things like dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, all the good stuff's coming in. You're like, yeah, I can do this. And you're pumped up. But the minute you look at the bigger outcomes, I want that, but I'm here. I want that, but I'm here. Then you're going to get all the fear and doubt.
Focused on what's ahead, right? Just the next step, the next step, the next step.
Yeah, because what you don't want cortisol or adrenaline running around the body, because that's just going to make you feel like this is not going to happen. So that's really, really important. And then the final P is projection. And we all do this. It's like, I guess the positive version of it is visualization. People visualize what they want, But projection is just your mind, you're allowing your brain to do its thing. And if it's, you can imagine now, it's predicting a failure, what's the projection going to be? It's going to be bad. It's going to be telling you all the things that can go wrong. So those four come together and they just drive you into the ground. And so you talk about people coming to me when they really, really need help. And that might be somebody saying, I need to change my career. I want to get a promotion, or I want to go and get a job for a totally different company. I'm like, great, let's do this, 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 and this. And then they're not doing it. I'm like, what's going on? They're not doing it. And I know what's going on, but me seeing it doesn't help. I've got to get them to see it. They need to see they're procrastinating. They need to see why they're not doing stuff. And then I try to explain to them why so they can see it. But generally, they wait for what I call the snap. And in the case of maybe trying to get a promotion or trying to get a new job, it's because in the back of their mind, and they don't share this right away, but there's a fear they could get made redundant. That could be because of their age, because of AI, because a new owner of the company, all sorts of things come up. And so they're thinking, well, I'm not going to tell the guy this. I'm just going to tell him I need a promotion. He can help me do that. But they're not doing the work until they snap. And now they're made redundant. Now they'll do anything. And so they're forced to change their lives. And being forced to change your life is much harder. Yeah. And you think where your self-identity is then. I'm redundant. I've lost my job. I'm useless. There's all these negative stuff in your head. And you're trying to get a job desperately. Whereas if they'd done the work earlier when they were ready to move and they believed in themselves and they had the self-identity for that new role, we could have got the job a lot easier.
So it's a self-identity, the mindset, the step-by-step approach. So it's better to do that when you're in a safe place, right? And you've got the time and the leeway to do that. So yeah, I think that's awesome. And thank you for giving that kind of like roadmap.
So I don't want them to think there's only self-identity to fix. That's part of it. So the four things, and I teach my clients that life is a game of snakes and ladders. And I could go into all of that for you if you wanted me to, but ultimately the ladders will come from experiences they've got, books they've read, what they believe. And so that could be a ladder and help them climb the mountain of, I call it self-mastery, the summit of self-mastery. So they could get a ladder and climb up very quickly. It doesn't have to be, a 12-week course or a year program, dependent on them. And this is why I love to work one-to-one. Even though that's not the best money, it's my most joy because I get to speak to the people heart to heart. And dependent on their experiences, I can help them elevate very quickly. But the snakes really come from the subconscious mind. And it sounds, again, like it's a bad thing, but it's just protection. So the four things that they've got to look out for. One, subconscious mind is recorded everything. It's a hard drive. Everything in your life is on it. And so that's why sometimes you could, let's say you're in your 30s and you suddenly get triggered by something and you're like, I don't even know why I got like that, or got really angry or really nervous, and I don't even know why. It could be from an experience you had when you were 6 years old and this thing just reminded you of it. Boom. And so subconscious is very powerful. And so I help my clients dig into that, find out what's going on. And so once we can see what it is, then we can see it probably isn't relevant today. But we've got to teach the subconscious that that's the case. So we can mine that information. And I like to say that the subconscious mind, when that finds a pattern it doesn't recognize, or if it finds a pattern it recognizes and it's bad news, it whacks its hand down on this big red button, which is the nervous system. And so you don't feel the subconscious mind, it's information. But now it hits the nervous system, now you feel it. And that's where the doubt comes in. That's where the fear comes. And so you're literally feeling it in your body. And that is usually enough to protect people and stop them doing what they would like to do. And again, just bear in mind, it's information. And now you're feeling it in the body. And you see, you really need to look at it and translate it. And every coin has got two sides. So there's probably a reason to protect you. Like all the risks I've took in my life, I could look back and go, I'm not risking again. But I can now look at all the risks that paid off. There are probably many more that paid off against those that didn't. And it's got to be the case. Otherwise, I wouldn't keep risking. I wouldn't keep moving forward the way I do. And so then after we've dealt with those two, subconscious nervous system, then we've got self-identity. And the interesting word there for me, and I always ask my clients what it means, and they tell me what they believe it is. And ultimately, it's their self. They've decided who they are. And I say it's like putting a wooden fence around a field. And as long as you're inside that fence and you put the fence up, you decided what the parameters of your field are. But if you're inside it, that's the comfort zone. But the minute you get up to the fence, or it looks like you might even go over it because you're going to do something new, something that there's no pattern, that it doesn't recognize it, we don't know where we are here, then that gets the security officer. And the security officer is your ego. And the ego comes in, and that's the voice in the head. And so now that's why I call it a security officer. So instead of just being bells and ringing and that's all going on down here, in your head, you've got the security officer. Why are we doing this? We've tried before, and it accesses the information from the subconscious. And so people identify with their ego and think it is them because it knows everything about them. And it's so logical. If we do this and it goes wrong, we're going to be laughed at. You know, you imagine what they're going to say. What's your ex-wife going to say? What's the so-and-so going to say? And off it goes. And they talk themselves down and they move away from the fence, and now they're back in the comfort zone. And then, of course, the system calms down. They're, okay, let's just stay here. But actually, the dream life is the other side of the fence. We've got to push it out. But it comes back to those micro steps. If you push the fence out little by little by little by little by little by little, then it doesn't set off the alarm bells. But if you try to jump, or you tell it, hey guys, we're going to put the fence out here,
Too much. Too soon.
Yeah. Does that all make sense?
It does. Yeah. And it's a nice way to think of it. I think visually as well, it just helps people get their heads around it. I'm curious. So for you, I mean, you've done a ton of self-learning, and you're helping a lot of people. But how important were mentors for you in your different kind of reinventions and in your journey overall? Were you able to find mentors along the way?
Oh yeah, they are very, very, very important, because ultimately your mentor is almost your own blueprint for your self-identity. So when I joined the ship, my blueprint my dad gave me was the one I didn't want. So in that case, I'm moving away from what I don't want. Yeah. And by the way, just to make this clear, I've made friends with my dad about 30 years ago. I got to know his full story, and he didn't have a great life himself. So all understandable, made friends with him. And so I get along with my dad. It's all part of my spiritual self-healing, etc., etc., etc. But just to give the full story to your audience. So I don't want them to think I'm full of hate and hate my dad. I got over all of that. And hey, it was a good driving force, right? I knew what I didn't want to be. So that made me pivot and say, what do I want to be? And so my first mentor was really the cruise director on the ship. He was making all this money, and he bought racehorses, properties all over Florida. He had yogurt factories. So he spent all this money. He's the first guy. I didn't really know what a Rolex was in those days. I didn't know what expensive watches were. And so it's because of him, and he showed me all his wealth and igniting my brain that I knew that's what I wanted. There's a mentor. So I got my first Rolex, my first Breitling, all because of the inspiration. And you could say that this is where the subconscious is very powerful. These were patterns that I was seeing that I liked, and I'm now embedding them in my head. And so at the time, this is not true today because I've grown so much, but at the time, that getting my first all gold Rolex was a big marker for me to go, I'm going in the right direction. Yeah. And then getting the Breitling, which was a dream watch for me, another big marker. So to a certain degree, it's all material, and it was at that time because I just wanted to have money.
You were young as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was a great mentor in that respect, and I'm not knocking him because he gave me the opportunity to become financially free, but he didn't teach me how to invest. He bought the properties, he bought racehorses, he bought yoga factories, and I didn't really see that. And maybe he tried to tell me, and I didn't pay attention.
Get you into the property investing, or that came later? Building multiple streams of income was something that came later for you.
Yeah. Funnily enough, my mum, who separated from my dad many, many years ago, my mum had been saying to me, you only hear what you want to hear, right? You hear what you're looking for. And in my head at the time, I was already thinking I might live in America because my life's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so in my head, my mum used to say to me, buy properties, use that money to buy houses. And I went, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to do that? I'm going to live in America. So it wasn't even in here. And I think this is really important. I think we really do. We see what we're looking for. So in that case, my mum's trying to probably give me great information, but it didn't go in. And maybe even the cruise director that taught me, maybe he gave me information, but I wasn't interested in that. I just wanted to get the watches and the wealth and the girls and the cars and have all that fun. Do you see what I mean? So, Tony Robbins does a great thing. He says it's an old trick now. Probably people will even know it. And in fact, we can do it right now. This will be an experience for your viewers, but they might already know this. So look around the room that you're in and find as many things as you can that are red. And I'm going to ask them to screen them out to the camera in a moment. So I'll give them 10 seconds. Look around the room, anything you can see that is red. Red, 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 red. Look for red. And if you need to, you can even look for slightly different shades of red. We could go burgundy if you really need to. But, look around and see if you can find red, red, red. Okay? That's about 10 seconds. So now tell me everything you saw that was blue.
Right. You weren't looking for it.
You weren't looking for the blue, right? We were looking for the red, and we found loads of the red. And I think that's probably what happened to me. I was looking for success, and my idea of success was money, watches, cars. Yeah, not investing in property, Mum. So she tells me, she even rubs it in these days. I told you all those years ago, and I just didn't hear it.
It sounds like you eventually listened to her advice.
Yeah, I when I got to the UK, I fell in with a very different group of people, and I learned. And then I learned the stocks and shares. Got burned on that as well. And so if I'd had a mentor for stocks and shares, that would have made a big, big difference. And so to answer your question, they are very important. But that first mentor really helped me, and I achieved those goals, but I just didn't have a fully rounded picture. But that's probably my fault. And then when I got into LA, I was with probably the wrong people because I'm hanging out with a load of students who want to be actors. But maybe if I'd been with a different circle of people, maybe working actors, I could have been drawn up into a different place. So when I got into the UK, I was really isolated, and it was really finding TV. And so my mentors were the guys I was watching, the ones that I decided were the best and they're selling the most. So I watched them, and I pinched everything I could from what they were doing, built that into my model, and that got me the job. And then I evolved that myself with my own learning, because now once I got the job, I understood how it all worked. So that grew me. And then when I decided to become a coach, I went and got training, and trainers are mentors. But again, I broke away because in coaching, and I'm not knocking coaching, I love it. I think it really works. But in coaching, we're taught actively listen, which is a very important skill. And all the answers are within the client, and it works. And I'm sure that some people, coaches, will reach out and go, that's the only way to do it. But I came to the conclusion from my clients that just finding out what they really wanted and asking them questions wasn't enough, because sometimes their self-identity wouldn't get them there, or their subconscious mind was holding them back. And so I moved more and more and more. Instead of just training people and then coaching, I moved into transformation, and I wanted to help people overcome the 4 things that are holding them back. And that's why
I think that's when you see the most movement in someone's, the way someone is and their future.
And once they can see that, and there's all sorts of tools that I use to dig into that subconscious. But once they can do that, then I give them tools to move forward. And as they move forward, giving them tools, I think, is so important. And in coaching, I was taught, don't give. You ask them, they've got it inside them. But I became this hybrid. And now I'm 16 years in. I do it my own way, which probably my original trainers would tell me that's wrong. But again, it's evolution. You evolve. And here's my biggest thing I hear today. People tell me I don't need a coach because I've got AI. I jump on ChatGPT or Claude. They jump on those, and I can talk to that, and it gives me all my answers. And here's the key: if that's somebody that's watching right now, I'm not saying don't do that. Do it. Do it. It's fine. But that again is information, and what you're really looking for is transformation. And so if you want to become that new self-identity, information isn't going to get you there, because the 4 snakes are going to come and bite you in the ass. And you'll be like, I'm trying so hard. I'm working so hard. I'm doing everything I can. I just can't seem to get there. And I call that the trap of self-restriction. They're holding themselves back, and round and round and round they go, and they just don't understand why. But once I can explain it and show it, we can free
It's
them.
only a true mentor and coach that can really guide you through that, and surrounding yourself by the right people. I mean, it's so foundational to people moving on. So I have one final question, and it's really, do you have any final advice for busy corporate leaders? They want to plan for maybe an alternative career or income sources, either alongside or as an alternative to their current job. What's one micro step that they can take this week to begin designing their next stage without burning their current world down, right? I mean, but
Yeah.
any advice?
Well, I just want to say thank you to you because you just used the perfect language. You said micro step. And so really that is the key. If they take little steps, so I give them a little format here. One, work out what your compelling future is. Yeah. What's your
Yeah.
preferred reality? What is the dream? How would you know that you've got it? And I would say they now talk about 25 years, 10 years, 5 years. I'm going to say don't do that because that is so far away that
Yeah.
it's okay to plan it very loosely. Yeah. Have an idea. I want to be a millionaire, whatever it might be, but keep that loose because again, if that's so far away, the gap in between is so big, your nervous system's going to kick in. You're just going to stop and go, oh, I can't do it. So I would say focus on the next year. What could I
Right.
do in the next year? Then backward engineer. Where does that mean I've got to be in 9 months? Where does that mean I've got to be in 6 months? Where does that mean I've got to be in 3 months? So what
Yeah.
can I do this month?
Yeah.
And I want them to bear in mind that basically you'd probably start off quite slow. And then by month
Yeah.
3, you start gaining. 6 is gaining. Month 9, it tilts. And then you're going to be on fire. So
Right.
don't feel like if you're saying I'm going to make £1 million, don't think, well, halfway means they're going to be $500,000. It doesn't. You might
Doesn't
only
work.
be on $250,000 then because now you get the arc that goes up and it grows dramatically. So you can leverage everything. So the key is then this last month, work out all the micro steps. What are the main things I've got to be working on? Do I need to learn some new skills? Skill set is very, very important. Do I need to get some support? Do I need system strategies in place? I call that the tool set. But
Yeah.
the biggest one is mindset. And mindset, I call it the triad of success. So skill
Yeah.
set, tool set, and mindset. And those three
Yeah.
things together are very, very important. However, and this is where many people go wrong, your tool set is only about 5% of your success. The skill set, important, and most people focus entirely on this and they put all their money, I'm talking thousands, tens of thousands of pounds on their skill set. That's 15%. Because you probably
Wow.
know people that
Okay.
have spent money on courses and education
Oh,
and they still
and you can
don't
spend
do it.
a lot of time as well on gathering knowledge, but not actually stepping onto the path, right? So I think but the mindset is that stepping onto the path, actually. Yeah.
The 80%, you've got to get your head in the right place. 80% mindset, 15% skill set. So probably from my experience, most people have got the skill set and they just don't believe it, but they've already got the skill set. I can see it. And so that's why I'm able to help people move forward faster because they're saying, well, I just need to do one more course or I need to learn this first. I'm like, no, you don't. You've got
Just
it.
move, learn on the
Yeah.
way.
So we get them in motion and then we get
Yeah.
momentum going. That's really the way it works.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paul. And look, thanks for inspiring us with your stories, your insights about your personal reinvention by design and about the work you're doing with your clients. I think you've really shown us that reinvention isn't just about changing what you do. It's actually about changing who you are. Look, for our listeners, you can find out more about Paul's work at Engage with Success. And do also check out his books, Speak Without Fear and Speak and Earn. And please all remember, the magic can't begin until you get started. So to our listeners, thanks for joining me on Reinvention by Design. If you found value, follow, share, and start building your own reinvention plan. Reinvention isn't a reaction, it is a strategy. So thank you.